What is happening, everybody, and welcome to NFL Live Before Lock. And we've got a weird-looking NFL playoff schedule this week, and the reason that it's weird is because we were supposed to have a 2-game slate today. That's still the case, Eric. Nothing's changed with that. A 3-game slate tomorrow, and then a 1-game Monday Night Football slate. And what happens? Bad weather in Buffalo. There's a travel advisory, so none of the Buffalo fans will be able to get to the game. So what ends up happening in turn is that, well, the game that is supposed to be tomorrow ends up moving to Monday. It kind of fucks up my entire day because then I have to redo the schedule. I have to figure out who's available to do what shows at which time because, you know, everything's set in stone. We got a holiday on Monday. We've got Sunday is a weekend. So everything gets thrown into flux. DraftKings, however, still keeping tomorrow's slate as a 3-gamer. So it's going to lock at a different time, but the early game is still going to be included on tomorrow's slate. But for today, we've got a 2-game slate to break down. If you guys could do it as you come in, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and we got a deal going on, Eric. We've got a deal. Okay. If you guys sign up for our NFL package, it's less than $100 for the rest of the season. So you get our NFL Sims product, which is going to include all of the main slates and all of the showdowns for the rest of the NFL playoffs. And in addition to that, you get access to our PGA Sims. And that's not just for people who sign up now. That's also for any existing NFL Sims customers. You get access to our PGA Sims through next Sunday, January 21st. So a good little look into how our PGA tools work. I put a video up for how to utilize it on the YouTube channel as well. All you have to do is sign up using the link below, promo code DRIVE, and you are going to get yourself NFL Sims through the Super Bowl, less than $100, as well as access to the PGA Sims through next week. And if you're already an existing NFL Sims subscriber, you are also going to get access to our NFL package. Eric, what is going on? How are you looking forward to the playoffs? Do you have any hot takes coming into the playoffs?
Yeah, I'm pretty heavily invested. I'm a Minnesota Viking fan, so obviously I wouldn't cheer for them, but gambling exists, and I think Green Bay legitimately beats Dallas. I think that we haven't seen a 7 seed even be like remotely competitive so far in these playoffs since they changed the playoff format. I think that happens in Dallas on Sunday. So if you want to join me, plus 275, I think was like the prevailing number all day yesterday. I am pretty firmly behind that one. I think that's disturbing. My favorite prop of the entire NFL season exists in the Kansas City-Miami game. So yeah, I would say I have some hot takes.
Ooh, all right. Some hot takes. Anything that is actionable as far as betting goes? Do you have any bets that you're placing for the rest of the playoffs? I do have a future I want to give out to people, but I'll let you go first.
So Green Bay money line plus 275. I legitimately think, you know, everybody, Dallas or just act well. McCarthy against his former team, a team in Green Bay that has a quarterback who's playing better and better as the season's gone on. They're completely free rolling this spot in Dallas. I mean, you've just seen this so many times from them that it feels like one of those things. If you want to be conservative, plus 7.5, it's now moved mainly plus 7 most places. But I like just taking the money line there and enjoying your day when that one comes to fruition. But otherwise, Mecole Hardman over 13.5 receiving yards. Mecole Hardman anytime touchdown plus 900. Those are both on my card too. So I'm a sick person.
For me, any plus money bets on the Ravens to win the AFC looks pretty good. I like looking at the DVOA numbers when I'm trying to figure out, you know, the best odds for teams to win games, as well as what their odds are to win Super Bowls. They have the Ravens, Eric, with a nearly 70% chance, the DVOA numbers, to be the winner of the AFC this year. And you could find the Ravens like plus 175 earlier in the week. I think the best numbers now have come down a little bit, but it's still plus money. Anything plus money, I think makes a whole lot of sense on the Ravens to win the AFC. So that's where I'm at.
Do not hate that at all. I mean, now they get Mark Andrews potentially back for, I mean, we were looking like, hey, maybe they need to get to the Super Bowl. I know his window just opened by them activating him, but like Isaiah Likely is playing 12 personnel, playing both of them together out on the field, maybe for the first time. This could be really, really fun to watch.
Yeah, and looking in the chat to see what people are saying. Obviously, other big news, not going to impact today's slate, but AJ Brown is going to be out on Monday. I'm only bringing that up to kind of try to rub Mike the wrong way because he's producing the show. It looks like he's wearing an Eagles hat. Just want to point out, AJ Brown will not be playing on Monday, primarily because he just doesn't care about the Eagles. I believe that's what he said.
That's what it was.
I think he actually specifically said, fuck Mike Lawrence. When they said, what's wrong? Why aren't you playing on Monday? And he goes, just fuck Mike Lawrence. I want to screw up his week.
That's what I heard too. And obviously, I mean, this is just yet another device by the book. So they were able to talk the Buffalo city and everybody else in New York, not the mayor, the governor of New York, into just these widespread ridiculous reports that, oh, people can't travel to the stadium. Bullshit. They absolutely can travel to the stadium. You put on snowshoes and you hike all the way if you really want it there. Exactly. It's a conspiracy. The books now have all this money on the under 33.5 and it is dead. I mean, unbelievable. And now AJ Brown, same thing. He's taking that book money. I'm telling you, it's happening more and more now.
And also, I was talking to Mike before this, and he was telling me it's 80 degrees and sunny in Buffalo, record high temperatures. So really, really crazy stuff going on. No even snow there at all.
Unbelievable.
We're getting like 3 feet of snow. That's why I'm here in Philly.
Okay, Mike. Yeah, I see what you're doing here.
All right. So the bid is over. Let's talk about, I love you, Mike. Let's talk about the NFL slate that we have for today, which it's only going to be a 2-gamer. We've got the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Miami Dolphins. We've got the Cleveland Browns taking on the Houston Texans. And it's going to be a slate where a lot of people are gravitating towards the Cleveland Browns and Joe Flacco. Who would have thought this a couple of months ago? That everybody's like, oh yeah, it's the playoffs. You have to play Joe Flacco in the first round of the playoffs for DFS contest. But let's start by talking about the quarterbacks. If you guys haven't done it yet, like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you are a Stokastic member and you have access to our Discord channel, which comes with any of the packages that we have here, you could at me and we'll answer any questions you guys have over the course of the show. I'm going to have the Discord pulled up here. But let's start by talking about the quarterbacks, and let's just group them all together here. I don't know that we have to go by price range or anything like this, but who are you prioritizing at quarterback? If you can only play one, who would be your guy?
It's going to be Patrick Mahomes. So obviously we kind of touch on all 6 games here. I'm playing a lot more on the 6-game slate because I think that there's just small things that I kind of want to do on that one. For the Saturday only here, looking at the board with Joe Flacco, I mean, he is very, very popular, but there's no doubt that I just feel like you get Patrick Mahomes at 7.7% lower. People are maybe worried about the weather, and I will take all the information from Cleveland, Houston in the first game and apply it to KC, Miami. Like, obviously you're not getting like a 10 or a 12 game slate where I'm going to take all my exposure to the second game, but I mean, Kansas City has the highest implied team total on the slate. I understand it's -30 and -20. I actually do think that the under of that game is probably a pretty nice little selection of 44.5. And yet, for DFS, I don't know how you don't play Patrick Mahomes considering, everybody's down on him. There could end up being an influx of ownership coming down off of that one. And people look at the weather and they see, oh, Cleveland, Houston, and a dome. Kansas City, Miami is basically the Arctic. So I think Patrick Mahomes 7,100. He's the guy I'm playing in single entry. I'm going to be well overweight to him in large field as well.
Yeah, I've run all my stuff through the Sims, and for both DraftKings and FanDuel, I'm coming in well underweight to the field on Joe Flacco and well over on Patrick Mahomes. Now, yesterday, when I was running some lines, it was a little bit different, but then we got some projections updates. We had some added information, and I have by far my most rostered quarterback is Patrick Mahomes. So I'm looking at these guys in tiers, but there's like different ways to break them down. I agree with you. Patrick Mahomes is the guy to get to with all things being considered, especially now that we've got Joe Flacco being steamed up to the point where like nearly half the field is playing him. And it's kind of funny too, because I look at some of the discourse that I see either in YouTube chat or online, and people go like, but Patrick Mahomes, he's not playing all that well. The Chiefs offense is terrible. It's okay. Funny to me that people are so willing to throw Patrick Mahomes to the side and be like, yeah, how can we play Patrick Mahomes? We have Joe Flacco over here. So we look at Joe Flacco, who for sure, he's been playing extremely well as of late, but the fact that we could get Patrick Mahomes, to your point, it's way less ownership than Joe Flacco. I think that if we just talked about that before the season, before we had any kind of other information, and you just told people like, hey, Joe Flacco is going to be almost twice as popular as Patrick Mahomes come to the playoffs in the first round, that would really floor people. So I think there's a lot of recency bias being baked in here, and I'm willing to bet on a bounce back from Patrick Mahomes at low ownership. Is the weather a concern? Sure, a little bit, but not to the point where I think Joe Flacco should be significantly more popular than Patrick Mahomes. So Mahomes is my number one quarterback to get to on the slate. But then in terms of Joe Flacco, if he's not your most rostered quarterback by default, you're underweight to him. How underweight are you to Joe Flacco though? Because I've got 150 lineups built out here. You tell me how underweight you're willing to be, and then I'll say where I'm at.
I'm playing 50 for the 6-game slate. I am playing 25 for the Saturday only slate. I have 0 Joe Flacco on Saturday. I have 4 shares of him out of 50 in the 6-gamer.
All right. So for today's Slate, I'm getting myself to 20% of Joe Flacco, which is about half of what the field is. I think that's a good number to be at just based on what the prices are. Like, I'm not going to say you should play 0% of Joe Flacco. Then there's only 2 games, only 4 quarterbacks to consider, but he's the one who I have the biggest underweight stand to. And then as far as CJ Stroud, he seemed like I come in neutral to CJ Stroud. I hardly get to any of Tua, and I do have some pretty big concerns with the weather as far as Tua goes for a couple of reasons. We've got Tyreek Hill's been banged up, Jalen Waddle's been banged up. And I don't know how much to read into this, Eric, but Tua plays his games in Miami. That's warm weather. He played his college football in Alabama. That's also warm weather. This is not a guy who's played in very many cold weather games over the course of his career. And then he also considered that the wide receivers not at full health right now. Of all of the expensive quarterbacks on this slate, which is there's 3 of them, CJ Stroud, Patrick Mahomes, Tua is my least favorite today.
I totally am with you. Yeah, Tua's just in the toughest spot with the conditions, with everything else going for it. And CJ Stroud, as I look at him, I mean, this could be one of those things, though, where you get a little frustrated. You get to the flip and like CJ Stroud ends up 25%, Flacco ends up 40% like we have projected. And then you're just like, wow, nobody is going to click on Tua. And at 8%, like if we're going to look at 4 or 5% Tua on a 2-gamer, you obviously are interested by that. He has a skill position player in Tyreek Hill where it takes one play for him to just do something ridiculous, take an 85-yarder to the house, and all of a sudden you're in a really good spot with that single stack. But for me, I'm with you. I think that you look at the dome game there in Houston, it's hard not to prefer that. And then Kansas City, you look at the ownership coming on Patrick Mahomes, considering the total just hasn't moved. There's a lot of sharp money that exists out there in the betting world that's sculpting out those lines. And for Kansas City still have the highest implied total, and then for Miami to still have the lowest implied total on the slate, I feel pretty comfortable just saying, give me the Mahomes side of it for sure.
Yeah, and for people in the chat who are talking about, Joe Flacco and everything, I do think if there was no concerns about ownership and it's just like, let's build the best lineups we can, then yeah, Joe Flacco would be the guy today. But if people bring up ownership in the chat and in Discord, it is solely due to ownership that I don't like getting to Joe Flacco today. He is by a mile the most.
It's not that we don't like him. I'm legitimately cheering for a fun football game. I have no prop, no play on anything from Cleveland, Houston, because I think there is a large range of outcomes and I have no idea. You look at the marketplace, things look pretty darn efficient, even over at OddsShopper. Very difficult for me to really like anything from that football game. Thought about maybe like some Jerome Ford props, and then I realized, what am I doing? There's 5 other games, 6 total on the weekend. So that's literally the only game I don't have anything from. So from a enjoyment angle and from, just a personal level, like I'm cheering for Joe Flacco, but my DFS lineup surely are not.
And we are sponsored here today by Owner's Box. If you guys want to go check out Owner's Box, pretty good time to do it because their contest today are, Saturday slate, smaller one, but still, it is only halfway full. Looks like there's a pretty good chance of overlay over at Owner's Box, and you should be taking advantage of that. So if you want a chance to play an NFL DFS slate with some overlay today, which is hard to find on FanDuel and DraftKings, but you probably are going to be able to find it over at Owner's Box today. Sign up using the link that we have below because that is going to get you up to a $500 bonus on your first deposit. And the Owner's Box contest, like I said right now, only about halfway full. So good chance you're going to have some overlay there, which is always additional value. So overlay as well as the deposit bonus. So take advantage of that over at Owner's Box. Do you have anything else to add about the quarterbacks, Eric?
Yeah, obviously use the information from the first game. This is something not enough people do, and it always floors me, but it's a 2-game slate, and you're going to get the ownership of the first game. You're going to be able to calculate that, and you're going to know exactly what kind of ownership you're looking at for Patrick Mahomes and Tua Tagovailoa for that evening game. And then obviously I don't like Tua, but if I have certain lineups where I need to find a different configuration, just make sure you're late swapping. It is such an edge on a 2-game slate like this because all the information from the first one, it's so easy to apply to the second game and people just never do it.
All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the running backs. The running backs are very, very tricky to navigate for this 2-game slate. The reason that they're most tricky to navigate is because Raheem Mostert is officially questionable to play, and we are not going to find out whether he's in or out until likely not in the next 45 minutes, not until after the early game locks. So a couple of ways that we have to break this down. But first, do you have any real lean on this? Do you expect Mostert to play, to sit, to play limited, something in between? What is your read on the Raheem Mostert situation?
I have absolutely no idea. I think if it were just about any other running back, if they don't practice coming into a Saturday game here on that Thursday, I would be pretty floored, but he was a limited participant on Wednesday and Thursday. And I think that just puts it into flux where, God, Devon Achane has been very, very good. He's proven that he can not necessarily be a workhorse back, but like he's played quite a bit, 14 and 10 carries here the last two. It's so hard to just say I have some kind of a lean there, but what makes it easy is you can play as much Achane as you want, and there's going to be a lineup or two. I'm sure you could play Achane and Mostert together and just try to say, hey, the Miami running game gets after it in the cold weather, and you maybe snag the touchdowns. But because Achane is 6,800 and Mostert 6,700, if Mostert ends up active, I can just swap some portion of that down to Mostert. So what I've done is actually just remove Raheem Mostert from my pool entirely. And I'm just playing Achane, and I'm kind of giving him a little bit of a boost. And I know that I can kind of peel back a little bit of that ownership and go directly to Mostert in the event that he's active.
My expectation is that Mostert plays. And assuming he plays, I do find it kind of hard to want to prioritize him or Achane. I do agree with you, though. If I'm going to play one, considering the unknown status of Mostert, I would lean more towards Achane. But these are two of the most expensive running backs on the entire slate. That this applies to Owner's Box, FanDuel, and DraftKings. And they're going to be splitting the touches and the snaps if they're both active. And then we look at some of the other running backs we have on the slate, like Pacheco. No real concerns about anybody's going to be sharing the backfield with. Jerome Ford. Yep, to an extent, he shares the backfield with Kareem Hunt, but it's not the same split that we have between Achane and Mostert. And then Devin Singletary, he's really solidified his role in Houston's backfield. So I think we've got a lot of running backs that we could confidently say are going to get sizable workloads. And it's harder for me to feel the exact same way about Achane and Mostert, who also happen to be two of the most expensive running backs this slate. Like we could get Jerome Ford for cheaper, Devin Singletary for cheaper. So with that being the case, I'm really not getting to very much of Achane or Mostert. And that's not really something that I'm looking to change. So I'm hoping that Mostert plays. My expectation is that he's going to play.
Yep, that's my expectation is that, for the most part, it's like, for me, it's a true 50-50, if I'm being honest. Like, I don't have a lean on it whatsoever. If you think that he's going to be active, then you can probably just factor it in right from the jump. But for me, I think it's such an easy solve. I don't want to play them together. I mean, are there any cases, even in a 150 set, where you want to play Achane and Mostert together, Greg?
So out of my top 150 lineups, I got one share of Achane, one share of Mostert, and that is not with them in a lineup together. So the scenario where I would want to play them together would be in a spot where, like, you can make a case for it on a 2-game slate. It would just be because this is a lineup combination the field is hardly ever going to play, and we project it to be optimal at not necessarily a high chance, because there's never going to be a high chance that Achane and Mostert are going to be optimal together. But on a 2-game slate, if I was to look at all the data and see like, hey, only 2% of the field is playing Achane and Mostert together, whereas maybe there's like an 8% chance of the combination of them being optimal, then yeah, I would. But that's not really how I'm viewing this slate. And especially because we do have 17% ownership going into Achane right now in the contest generator, around 10% to Mostert. And Mike's pulled that up on screen because he's ran some sims and he's shown the results of it there. So on every site, I find it hard to get to Achane and Mostert because of what their price tags are primarily.
Yep, I'm with you there. I think the price tags make it prohibitive. As you said, there's probably a good chance that there is positive expected value in putting the two together in a lineup, but you'd have to run this slate out a bazillion times to really realize that. And for me, it just comes down to like, yeah, if your risk tolerance is through the roof, go ahead and fire that up. But I'm so behind getting to Devin Singletary and Isaiah Pacheco today. It seems as though the field is as well. I think that considering they're $300 exponentially $1,000 cheaper in Singletary's case, it's just so much easier to land on them, find different ways of configuring your stacks and let the Sims tool do the work.
We've got a question here in the Discord channel from Einsteinium, and this is going to kick off our conversations about the popular running backs. And he is asking us, is Singletary running back that we should be getting underweight to? So we've got 3 popular running backs on the slate. And once again, this applies to FanDuel, DraftKings, Owner's Box, Singletary, Pacheco, Jerome Ford. That's where all the ownership is going at running back. Should we be getting underweight to Devin Singletary, per Einsteinium's question, Eric?
No.
I agree. I find him very difficult to get underweight.
I have an eternal amount of Devin Singletary, and I think you should too. I mean, for the 6-game slate especially, for me, if I'm looking at not necessarily just saying, hey, I need this game to not shoot out, but I kind of need it to not shoot out. It's ironic that Cleveland Houston has as much ownership on the 6-game slate. I know that we're covering the 2, and tomorrow I'm going to be on Live Before Lock covering everything with Matt Kajeski, but like For this 6-gamer specifically, I'm not going to play a popular Cleveland-Houston game. And what is one of the paths that just kind of helped me out there? It's being overweight to Devin Singletary. So whether it's the 2-game slate or the 6-game slate you're building out lineups for right now, I just find him to be such an easy plug and play. The price point is so good. The opportunity, Dameon Pierce is just fallen way by the wayside here in recent weeks. And Houston's played in competitive spots. So we kind of know what that utilization is going to be between the two of them. I think there's so much certainty there where you talked about the Mostert situation. We have so much uncertainty there. We have uncertainty in later spots, like with DeAndre Swift coming off of an illness, how much they're going to utilize him for Philly. Like obviously there's a lot of things with the Pittsburgh and Buffalo game that look completely different now and are being factored in as such. But Devin Singletary is now the workhorse back of the Houston Texans. If that game doesn't go completely berserk, I'm hoping Singletary is one of the reasons why.
We've got a super chat here from Ace of Spade, and so we'll answer this, and we'll get back to talking about all of the other aspects of the running back position. But he is asking us here, DK tiers for the full slate. Thanks again. So let me pull this up and see the DK tiers. I don't think there is one for the full slate.
Let me just go to DK itself.
Like there isn't. I assume he means for tomorrow then, because there isn't a 6-game tier slate.
There's a Saturday tiers. There's a Saturday. I've got it right here.
More so, what does he mean by because he says full slate? So does he mean today, tomorrow, or something else?
Tiers is kind of fascinating today because I mean I'm looking at it for the first time right now. Didn't think we were going to get this question, but they have the Browns defense involved with a bunch of skill players there in tier 5. And then in tier 6, it's 3 defenses along with like Durham's Smythe Me Almighty Smither, and then Kadarius Toney, who's, dinged up and we have no idea if he's going to be active or not. Berrios, Hardman, Mechie. I mean, that's kind of fun to have the defenses involved in the tiers here in some of these sections. So kind of a fun Saturday NFL tier slate, to be honest.
Yep. And he did clarify that he means the Saturday slate. So
okay,
pulling up Saturday here. Just wanted and I'm happy I clarified because when you said full slate, I thought 6 games, but then I was looking like I don't think there is a 6-game tier slate, and then I was thinking maybe Sunday, but yeah. So let's talk about today then, where we've got four quarterbacks. All the quarterbacks are in tier 1. Fair to say that we're both going to land on Patrick Mahomes as the option here.
Yes, we are.
All right. So Patrick Mahomes. Oh, I like this, by the way. You could fill out the lineup as we go here, Mike, which it looks like that's what he's doing on screen here. So considering with Patrick Mahomes in tier 1, tier 2, we have Amari Cooper, we have Tyreek Hill, we have Nico Collins, Devon Achane. Which way do we want to go here? Cooper, Hill, Collins, or Achane?
We want to go to Hill, the Tyreek Hill guy. That's who we want to go to.
All right. So Tyreek Hill here, who we'll talk more about him when we get to wide receivers. I'm quite underweight to him for the full main slate, but for the purposes of this one, I think that actually I should have checked my wide receiver exposure when I was updating stuff because that might not be the case anymore. But either way, for tiers, Tyreek Hill in tier 2.
You're a liar.
Exact, dirty, filthy one. Tier 3. Tier 3 is interesting because I don't want to go to Waddle here, but we've got 3 potential. Keep in mind, we've already played Patrick Mahomes in tier 1. So tier 3, there's Pacheco, Rice, and Kelsey. Pacheco projects the best, I think rightfully so here. But Eric, how much do we want to correlate Patrick Mahomes with one of his pass catchers compared to Pacheco? There's interesting ways we could approach tier 3.
I like Rice the most.
I'm going to go with Travis Kelsey.
Okay.
I'm going to go with Travis Kelsey.
That's just fine. I am so overweight to the double of Rice Hardman with Patrick Mahomes. It could just, it is just disturbing to look at here.
Tier, whatever number we're at next, 4. So tier 4, we have the Texans-Browns game exclusively in this tier. Singletary, Njoku, Ford, Schultz, Elijah Moore. I'm going to go with Devin Singletary, who just said is a good chalk play for the normal slate.
Yep. If he beats out Njoku, Yahtzee, that'll be a lot of fun.
All right. Here's where stuff gets, to say the least, dicey, Eric. Tier 5 has the Browns defense. It has Robert Woods, David Bell, Justin Watson, Cedric Wilson, and Richie James. What are we doing here?
The best projected is going to be Robert Woods for me. I know Brown's active, but like I'm going to be going to Robert Woods in that tier. Just looking at my lineups.
I'm going to say David Dell, but I mean the
Oh,
options.
how'd that
here,
feel? How'd that feel coming out of your mouth? See, it was disgusting. You
it
didn't
all
like it,
feels
did
terrible.
you?
Like I
Yep,
mean,
there you go.
the actual one who projects best in our projections is the Browns defense.
Yep.
But I'm not willing.
I bet they end up chalky in that tier if we're going to be honest.
Could be. Tier 6 then has the Texans defense, the Chiefs defense, the Dolphins defense, Durham Smythe, Mecole Hardman, Braxton Berrios, John Mechie, and Kadarius Toney. So if you thought tier 5 was rough, tier 6 is even more difficult to navigate.
Welcome to Eric Lindquist's massive stand of the entire weekend, Mecole Hardman.
Texans defense.
Okay. I'm so Mecole Hardman heavy. I don't even think I should actually be on this show technically because I'm going to be giving bad advice here very shortly.
All right. Well, the good news for you is that first we still have the running backs to finish.
Oh, good. Okay. Thank God.
And I really just want to build my lineups around the chalk running backs. I'm taking stands at other spots. Like somehow Patrick Mahomes is a stand for this slate, like getting well overweight to him when he's not projected for all that much ownership. I'm cool with the chalk at running back. Devin Singletary, Isaiah Pacheco, Jerome Ford. I like them in that order. Do you feel differently about the top running backs?
Nope. I think they're fantastic. I think what's the interesting thing is just to talk about it relative to the 6-game slate. I've told you I'm already playing more on that. Tony Pollard and Aaron Jones in that Dallas Green Bay game are going to be extremely popular. I think they should be extremely popular, but I do like Devin Singletary a little bit more, $700 less than Pacheco, and gives me more access to revolve around the 3 wide receivers and flex spot. I feel better locking him in that first game, especially because I'm going to be underweight to Flacco. I'm going to be underweight to the game as a whole, other than Devin Singletary, who I'm basically jamming. So for the 6-gamer, want to throw that out there. Kyron Williams, my favorite tournament guy to get to for that 6-game slate as well. But as I look at my lineups now, Devin Singletary, nearly half of my lineups for the 6-game slate. So that is definitely the preferred way that I am going about it.
All right. And now for today's 2-gamer, I already mentioned the guys that I want to build there. I'm playing the chalk at running back, but if you had to take a chance on one of the less popular running backs, and whichever way you want to go, it could be Achane, it could be Mostert, it could be, you could take a chance on Kareem Hunt. If you're going to play one of these guys who is not going to be one of the popular running backs, any of the guys who are sub 20% projected ownership, which direction do you go on taking a shot at a lower owned RB?
Jeff Wilson by a mile. So for the 2-game slate, 25 lineups, I've got him in almost half of them. I've got him in 11 of 25 there for the Saturday only slate. 4,200, and we don't know Raheem Mostert's status. We don't know how much he's going to play in this game, how healthy he's going to be for this game. And it just gives you a completely different lineup look. 4,200 to go down to him. He's not going to show up in an optimizer. We've got him projected for 0.61 fantasy points. But if for some reason you get Raheem Mostert out, obviously he's going to be intertwined into that workload. If this game gets out of hand in any capacity, they probably take Achane, he's a rookie. You know, they're got to protect him to some extent coming into next year, coming off of the litany of injuries he's had. I just think this is an awesome spot for in tournaments to do the anti-optimizer play and say, all right, where are the ways that things can really go right for me? If you use up almost all of your Saturday and you go to 4,200 Jeff Wilson, think of what you can do. So for me, Devin Singletary, obviously that's going to be like an ingrained part of my running back position there for the 2-gamer and for the 6-gamer. But I really like $4,200 Jeff Wilson to just completely say, screw it. I'm trying to finish first. And if something happens to Mostert, sweet. I know people will get there if you get Mostert off the field, but even if he's active, I'm saying that I think that it's viable.
Got some interesting news that just came in, which is going to be pertinent to the Monday Night Football game. Jalen Hurts, not on the injury report. DeAndre Swift, not on the injury report. Baker Mayfield, questionable to play on Monday.
What?
So Baker Mayfield, who was pretty hobbled in the Bucs last game, you still have to think he's more likely to play than not, but he is questionable. So potentially some chance that Baker Mayfield will not be playing on Monday night, which I'm sure that Mike has got to be really happy about because he knows that there's zero chance that his Eagles could win in a game fair, just straight up, because they can't even beat dog shit teams that are trying to lose at the end of the season. So Mike, very excited that his Eagles now have a chance to maybe win. You
could go from having one quarterback playing in the game to 0 quarterbacks playing in the game. That, like viable quarterbacks, because Jalen Hurts is obviously a running back.
What if they ran the tush push every play?
They should run that tush push
every play. Just line up and just do it the entire. Because how upset would that make people if they
would make the NFL upset? Is who would be upset.
There is if they did that in a playoff game, there is a 0% chance that play would be allowed to be run again next year. They would find some way to get out of allowing that play to be legal. So I think they should. It would be hilarious.
That should be
I
the
enjoy
new victory formation.
What?
That should be the Eagles' new victory formation. The end of the game,
just tush push. Just tush push to end the game at every time now. What are you gonna say, Eric?
Oh, I have no idea. I have no clue.
So for me, if I'm taking a punt on one guy, it's going to be Kareem Hunt. And I understand where you're coming from, Jeff Wilson Jr. And it does obviously create a tricky situation because if we knew Mostert was playing, fair to assume that if Mostert wasn't on the injury report, you wouldn't get to any of Jeff Wilson.
No, I'm saying that we don't know if Mostert is active. Do we know for certain that he's going to be just in a timeshare with Achane? No, I don't believe that. So I would say either way, just because of what it does for my roster construction, 4,200 and just, those are going to mainly be like 2 running back type builds. Like I'm probably going to play him regardless of what happens to Mostert to some extent, just as like a punt to get completely different, get to some doubles of, the Kelsey, Rice, Mahomes, not exactly the cheapest thing, run it back with Hill. I have Hardman, obviously, that, we'll get to here later. I think that there's other viable guys, not Xavier Hutchinson anymore, but you could probably land on a couple of shares of Mechie. We don't know. I mean, Robert Woods has not been good since like the first 2 weeks of the season, basically. Noah Brown, how much is he going to play? There's just so many unknowns that exist on this slate. It's really fun for a 2-gamer as a result. So you got to be willing to embrace some uncertainty. But like Jeff Wilson, because of the price point, that's uncertainty that I can really get behind because there's multiple ways that it works out for you. 1, he gets like a goal line touch for some reasons, for whatever. 2, he plays complete garbage time. Or 3, Mostert isn't healthy completely. And, you get an opportunity for him to actually get work that other people aren't projecting for. So it is obviously risky. It is obviously something that doesn't work out a large majority of the time. But when it does, you finish first. So Jeff Wilson, I'm going to be playing quite a bit of, even with Mostert being in or out.
It's going to be Kareem Hunt for me. We have seen the Browns give him a good amount of goal line work, and we've seen him score touchdowns in the second half of the season. And that's really all you need from a cheap running back to potentially be optimal, especially on the FanDuel slate. So DraftKings, I think Kareem Hunt is viable, but FanDuel, I think he's a very interesting contrarian play at running back because of how much more weight the touchdowns hold. So I'm willing to take some shots on Kareem Hunt as a guy who's projected for around 10% ownership here at running back. Let's go into Discord and see if there's any questions that we got that have come in here, additional ones. And that is a no. So let's go ahead and start talking about the wide receivers. And still the case for me. I said it earlier and just wanted to double check my exposures to make sure that this is the case. We've got a lot of ownership going to Tyreek Hill. He's expected to be one of the most popular players on this slate. He exists in his own pricing tier. Both FanDuel, DraftKings, owners, but there's nobody priced anywhere close to Tyreek Hill. The next closest player in terms of price on today's slate to Tyreek Hill is Patrick Mahomes on DraftKings. That is $1,600 less expensive than him. So that's not even a skill position player. We're talking about a quarterback. So you have to get yourself in a totally different price range to get to Tyreek Hill. Now, if you have the salary, you're playing Tyreek Hill. But my preference is to go elsewhere. I'm well underweight to the field on Tyreek Hill, only making it to about 20% of my lineups. Eric, what are you doing with Tyreek Hill?
Doing the exact opposite of you. I'm way overweight to Tyreek Hill. And part of that is the exposure of some cheapies that I've talked about, both Jeff Wilson and McCole Hardman. It would be foolish for me not to be overweight on Tyreek Hill if I'm going to be going to the bottom of the barrel and trying to quote unquote flip the build. Everybody's coming in on Nico Collins and Amari Cooper. Everybody should have some allotment of Nico Collins and Amari Cooper, especially on a 2-game slate. But the question is how much? And for me, with the amount of Mahomes I have, with the amount of exposure I have to that game, and then, there's so many game scripts where just Tyreek Hill can just be that must-have piece. And I'm getting a pretty decent, I would call it a pretty decent ownership cut purely because of 1, conditions, 2, implied total, and 3, well, it's a difficult spot here in Kansas City with this defense. So Tyreek Hill, 9,400 he was last week, now down to 8,700, and yet coming in with 20% less than Collins and Cooper in our ownership. For me, that is pretty clearly, if I'm going to be as overweight to a McCole Hardman piece as what I'm going to be today, I better get to the guy who's projected for the most at the wide receiver position.
We've got a question from Jets World, which we'll touch on here. We'll get back to wide receivers. He's playing 10 lineups in the millie on DK, and he wants to lock in a defense, which first off, I'd recommend you not do. But here he says he wants to lock in a defense. and
Okay.
he wants to know KC or Cleveland. So my personal stance, I think you should just mix in the defenses. It's super random, and especially for a 2-game slate, it won't even necessarily be correlated to how well a defense plays. If somebody returns a punt for a touchdown, that defense is optimal, and that has nothing to do with how the defense actually played. So
Yep.
I'm not going to rant about how dumb defenses are, because I think everybody who plays DFS has done it a million times. Jets World, I recommend that you do not lock in a defense because of how random they are. But in the nature of answering his question, he wants to lock in either KC or Cleveland. If it's between those two defenses, which do you prefer? And it is Chiefs for me, by the way.
I will say Cleveland.
Okay. Yeah, it's defense. It's very hard to predict in any kind of way. The reason I'm going to answer KC is because if I look at my lineups, the quarterback I have the least exposure to is Tua. The offense I have the least exposure to is Miami. So it just kind of makes sense that I would be on the Chiefs there.
Yeah. Can I explain mine at least? Cleveland's 3,300. They're the most expensive. They're also the lowest owned. And then if you just ask me who's the best defense on this slate, it's Cleveland. It's going to be Cleveland by a decent margin. Obviously, they're playing in a dome, and they have a pretty good quarterback on the other side, but Cleveland is definitely the answer for me.
You know what's really weird? The most popular defense is Houston, and the most popular quarterback is Flacco. It just shows how dumb the lineups are going to be that are built today. The most popular quarterback is going up against the most popular defense.
Let's just blow defense up. Defense needs to go away. I like the owner's box way of doing things. I like pretty much everything that they do when it comes to the lineup iterations for things. Like, it's a way better product. So yeah, owner's box has it right. Play I like the college DFS model a lot more.
Yeah, I agree with you. I like the super flex as well. And that's actually, so I don't know shit about college football. I'll play it and I'll use Gajeski's projections that he puts up on the site. But one of the main reasons I like to play it is because it's the super flex. You don't have to play defenses, but we are stuck playing defenses today. My answer, Jets World, is going to be the Chiefs for your question there. Getting back to wide receiver. So you're going heavy on Tyreek Hill. I'm going under on Tyreek Hill. But I really want to know what it is that you like about Mecole Hardman, because as you have mentioned, he is somebody who's like your dark horse play of the week at wide receiver.
Yeah, this is going to make me look really, really smart or really, really dumb, and probably really dumb, but the ownership isn't there, so I don't really care. Mecole Hardman is the best tournament on this slate, and I don't think it's remotely close. We're both going to be well overweight on Patrick Mahomes. That was always going to kind of be the plan as soon as I looked at ownership. It became very clear-cut. Loved having the Sims tool behind me as well, where Patrick Mahomes ends up being, when I run it unencumbered, the highest owned quarterback that I get to. And then I just started working through certain things earlier in the week on Wednesday, and it just became very clear to me that I needed to jam Mecole Hardman, like not just play a little bit, but he ends up going to LA, and obviously he had Blaine Gabbert playing quarterback. It wasn't Patrick Mahomes. It was in a dome. There's a lot of reasons that you could say, oh, Mecole Hardman, of course, he had a good game. He was playing alongside Richie James and everybody else. They've had fucking nobody all season long do anything besides Rashee Rice, and for all intents and purposes, Travis Kelce has not been the same kind of a dude. Mecole Hardman has been there once upon a time. Yes, he has a Jets uniform in his profile picture on DraftKings. We all know that he was with the Kansas City Chiefs forever, gets signed, and then the Jets just unload him immediately there in week 7, gets activated, ends up getting a target there, but then runs into that issue with the thumb issue, and gets activated, and immediately, not a lower body injury, no issue. It was just like, let's see what we got in him here after protecting him the whole way so that we can use him in the playoffs. I'm pretty positive that was Kansas City's plan once he got dinged up, and they've been biding their time, just waiting to unleash. I know it sounds weird to say this, but I think Mecole Hardman Jr. plays a ton of snaps that are not being projected anywhere right now at any place. He ran 100% of routes on dropbacks last week. Week 17, 6% of routes, but again, it was like, we didn't really have to push him. Let's keep him healthy. And in week 18, they just tested him out, saw how good he could be. And that's the best performance you've had from any wide receiver besides Rashee Rice all season. And he did it with Blaine Gabbert. So I know this is just crazy, and I know that I'm passionate about it, but I am convinced that the best tournament play on this slate by far is Mecole Hardman. And you should have tons of him like I am, and we can all count our money later.
Nothing would make me happier And I think you know what I'm about to say.
0-0-0.
If MVS scores a touchdown today, and he is the guy instead of Hardman, MVS, who Eric was so excited about last year. Eric was the MVS best ball, DFS, the tournament play, betting his overs. If Eric finally gets off of MVS, which I know you've been off of him for a very long time now, but if you now pivot and you find your other guy that you love in KC for a slate and MVS ends up being the guy, oh, would it just be hilarious? It would just be so hilarious.
Why would you even put that out into the world? Do you hate me that much? Like,
yes, absolutely. But then also I look at my exposures, by the way, and I'm with you. I'm not getting to like an insane about him, Mecole Hardman, but I do have double-digit exposure to him, just over 10%. So I think he's
my highest owned wide receiver on the 6-game slate.
Yeah, you're an insane person. We've got him project for 3.5 fantasy points. That is enough for me to get well overweight to him in the Sims when I run everything through. So I think he's a good dart throw, but he's not even the guy who I look at as the only dart throw from the Chiefs. I think that Justin Watson is also worth looking at as a dart throw at low ownership. And if we are going to be playing Patrick Mahomes, which you and I both have said that we want to play Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce makes sense at tight end, Rashee Rice makes sense at wide receiver. But when this is only a 2-game slate, you really do want to be stacking your quarterbacks fairly heavily to maximize your potential upside. So you want to be making a lot of lineups, which you'll see also. Would you mind, Mike, go to on the Sims, go to the lineups, just so we could show people what the stacks look like? Because it is going to be a lot of triple and quadruple stacks, because that's how you find upside on a 2-game slate. And then you're also kind of forced to do it a little bit because you need the players to correlate. Like, you don't want to build a lineup where it's like, hey, here's Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane, and then your quarterback is Patrick Mahomes or something like that. So yeah, if you look at our stacks here, right, there's a lot of +3s. There's some +4s that come in here as well. So that you want to stack a little bit heavily. So we want to find some other punt wide receivers to get to from KC. I'm not going to just pigeonhole myself into Hardman. I agree with you. I think he's a good tournament play worth being overweight too. But I feel similarly about Justin Watson. Want to take some shots on him.
Yeah, I like Justin Watson. There's no way that I'm not going to have multiple iterations of lineups where I'm cycling through a lot of these random dudes. MVS is in a couple of lineups. Yes, not a complete zero for me. If you're going to be overweight to Patrick Mahomes, you have to have Watson. You have to have MVS. You should have some Tony if he ends up active. You should have all of these guys because it could be any one of those guys. And if you get the 3-4 touchdown passes and one of them goes to the obscure dude, gets a couple of extra targets, Yahtzee, you're looking to be in a really good spot. And, you know, everybody wants to get to the David Bell side of things, or, you know, because again, 20% ownership on David Bell as a wide receiver 3 behind Elijah Moore and Amari Cooper is wild. 4K Elijah Moore is going to be chalk beyond chalk. I get it. You know, he's got the Jets rapport from, 2 years ago with Joe Flacco, and now it's back, except for it was back for 1 week before it just became the Amari Cooper show. Last week, obviously, you didn't have Joe Flacco. You were protecting him. So, yeah, this is for me one of those spots where I'm just going to be going and cycling through these Kansas City guys. So I like the Justin Watson shout out, like a lot of those guys, even some Richie James is in my life.
You've got Chris Topher's throwing in the chalk emojis there in the YouTube chat. I don't know if that applies to Justin Watson or Mecole Hardman that we're talking about right now, but I'll tell you who it does apply to. It applies to guys like Nico Collins, Amari Cooper. Those are the really, really so there's 3 really popular wide receivers that we have on the more expensive end. There's Tyreek Hill, there's Amari Cooper, there's Nico Collins. I'm prioritizing Hill the least of those. I assume he is your most rostered wide receiver on the high end based on what you said before. Is that fair to assume, Eric?
For today's slate, for Saturday, yes. For the 6-gamer, no.
Okay, so for me, if I'm ordering the guys at the high end, Amari Cooper, who I'm about even with the field with, Nico Collins, who I'm a little bit overweight to, and then coming in underweight to Tyreek Hill. Cooper, Collins, Hill. How do you rank them?
Hill 1, Cooper 2, and then I'm gonna go Collins 3, which feels just ridiculous, but it's true.
It's really, it's mostly a price point thing for me, as well as some ownership being brought into the conversation as well. For you, you're playing guys like Jeff Wilson Jr. It's easier for you to get up to Tyreek Hill. Where I'm not, it's a little bit harder for me to get there. Are there any other wide receivers? Because there's one that really stands out to me that you're taking shots on for low ownership.
Yeah, Noah Brown. 5,100 Noah Brown makes all the sense. If you're a tournament player, you have to just assume when you look at projections, it's projecting for like what that median outcome can be in a lot of situations. But there's a case to be made where Noah Brown plays a lot more than you think, and he's #good. He is by far the second most talented wide receiver behind Nico Collins that is going to be active on this field. They don't want Robert Woods out there. They wish it was Tank Dell out there. But Noah Brown, 85% of the snaps in week 15 and 16 that you had seen, 32% target share there in week 15. Week 17 is where he got dinged up, so it's not really something that I'm looking at there. But Noah Brown is so talented, 5,100. I just find myself wanting to gravitate towards him in the mid-range. On the 6-game slate, I'm a little bit overweight. On the 2-game slate, I am way overweight.
Got a couple of questions in the Discord. And
did you say your guy was the same?
Yeah, Noah Brown. Okay. I have,
yeah.
So of all the wide receivers I'm overweight to, Noah Brown's the one I have the most significant stand on. He shows up in close to half of my lineups at ownership projected in the teens, $5,100. So I think that Noah Brown really, really sensible. I can't believe how overlooked he's being by the field here. So Noah Brown for me at wide receiver, somebody who I really liked. Couple questions in Discord. This one actually not a question, more of a comment from Melissa H. And shout out to Melissa. She won the NBA Minimax the other day and tweeted us about it. So I know I mentioned the NBA show. It doesn't mean I can't give you more props there, Melissa. But she's asking us, or saying, she's saying MVS just plain cruel. I agree with you, but at the same time too, it would be funny, would it not?
It would not. It would not be funny. Do you know how much money I lost on MVS? There's a reason, there's a reason that I have been a broken, sad person for a year and a half when it comes to the football streets. It's because I was convinced that MVS was going to succeed and was the most overlooked piece. And he goes out, and what does he do? He runs 100% of the routes, plays 100% of the snaps for like every game last year, and does squad diddly douche with it. So, yeah, it was not a fun experience. Thanks for letting me relive that one.
Think how good his cardio was at the end of the year. That's got to be worth something, right? Because we always talk about air yards in the NFL. What about ground yards? And not even catching the football, just how far did he run on the field every day? That's got to be a stat that's worth something. We got another question here from Pusha. Pusha in the Discord channel is asking us for a 6-game slate, last man in. So, Eric, I know you built out a good amount of lineups, and this is going to apply to somebody who you like as well. Mecole Hardman or Tucker Kraft.
That's so hard because Musgrave is back. This is probably the situation on the 6-gamer that I want to take a massive overweight stance to, and it's really hard. So I'm going to be overweight to Jordan Love. He's at 8.9% in our projections. I currently am right around 16-20. There's going to be a lot of things that change because you get 3 days to be able to hand build throughout the times to be able to kind of change things based on how you're doing. But I'm going to be overweight to Aaron Jones. He's the second most popular running back. I think he's the best running back play on that 6-gamer. And then Christian Watson is there as well. So that's a wide receiver that hasn't been there. Dontavian Wicks runs really good routes. They want to have him on the field here a little bit as well. And then Luke Musgrave is that number one, although Tucker Kraft has been better. For all intents and purposes, when they've both been active, he's been the better option. And Musgrave was a distant memory last time out, but does he play more coming off of injured reserve last week? They needed to have him, as kind of a backup insurance tight end to Kraft. I don't know what to make of the time split between the two. So I got to ride with my guy Hardman, but Tucker Kraft is the guy that, is higher projected for us. And you get more swappability because that goes on tomorrow. So tomorrow evening is that game, gets you an opportunity to kind of wait with your lineups a little bit more. So it pains me because I like the late swap element of it. It's a tough situation to figure out which one of the two it ends up being, and you want to punt with somebody, and Kraft's been that awesome punt. So it's going to be Hardman, but just ever so slightly.
So for me here, I'm going to go with Mecole Hardman. I think there's more upside there. A lot of range of outcomes with Mecole Hardman, but definitely there's a ceiling there. You and I are on the same page with Hardman, at least being a good contrarian option. And now we've got a question here from Father of 3. He wants to know what our exposure is in 20 max. Father of 3, I threw this into the Discord channel. For what specifically are you looking for? Like which slate for the 6-game slate, for this slate, any particular position? It's a pretty broad question there. And then Einsteinium is asking us, is Brevin Jordan too thin of a play? Let me see. Brevin Jordan. Did I get to him at all? Yeah, a little thin for me.
Yeah, no Brevin Jordan for me.
No Brevin Jordan.
Also, for anybody who cares, some of the lower dollar stuff it's not going to overlay, but it's not going to fill for the 6-gamer. So you've got the 100K huddle, the $5 there. So I would jump in that single entry like immediately. 20.5K out of 23.7K. That thing is not going to fill.
And there is going to be a fair amount of overlay on DraftKings, it looks like, for the 2-game slate. There's a bunch of contests, like single entry stuff that's only like halfway full right now. And now let's go and look at what Owner's Box has over here. Owner's Box is also going to overlay a little bit, it looks like, for today's slate. So a little bit of overlay everywhere. Now let's pull up FanDuel. Is FanDuel overlaying at all?
I'm not playing there because it's not a real site.
So
they are not serious people.
If you guys have access to the low dollar stuff, it looks like the 5-cent tournament is going to overlay on FanDuel. The $9 not overlay, but it looks like it's not going to fill. So if you guys are like grinding some of the low dollar stuff, go check out the 5-cent tournament over on FanDuel. Some overlay to be had there. All right, let's go and look at some of the other questions that we have. And it is father of 3, 2-game slate for the $3.20 max. Just like exposures everywhere. Yeah, we'll do a roundup after. So 2 more super chats, and then we'll go over our favorite options to get to at each position. Okay. First, Corey Bomber. No QB correlation, Rice and Achane or Hill and Schultz? That is Hill and Schultz for me.
Yeah, Hill and Schultz.
And then Trevor Otteson is asking us, 3v3. Hill, Elijah Moore, and Jerome Ford on one side, or on the other side, Kareem Hunt, Nico Collins, and Amari Cooper.
I'm going to go Tyreek. I like the Tyreek side.
I'm going to go Hunt, Nico Collins, and Amari Cooper. I like Hunt and Collins. I like Collins and Cooper so much.
Yeah, Elijah Moore is going to be so popular. If Elijah Moore goes off, I'm not winning money today. I can tell you that much.
And he's also in the Tyreek Hill combo.
Yeah, that's why I said that's why I was kind of second guessing myself as I was looking at the question on the board there. Tyreek, Elijah, Ford. Yeah, the Elijah Moore side is so chalky. So I mean, Tyreek with anybody else, I'm probably there for it.
Now let's see what we had back in the Discord. Father of 3 wants to know exposures for the $3.20 max. Yeah, so let's go through and let's go position by position. Who would be your number 1 option for $3.20 max at each position, followed by your second option? All right. So for me at quarterback, 1 would be Mahomes, 2 Joe Flacco.
Mahomes, CJ Stroud.
Running back, Singletary, Pacheco.
Singletary, Pacheco.
Wide receiver, that for me would be Cooper and then Collins.
It would be Hardman and then Hill.
You insane person. Tight end now, if we're talking about tight ends, which we're also about to talk about here, there's only 3 tight ends I really care to get exposure to today. We've taken some stands at other spot. Kelsey, Njoku, Schultz, nothing wild for me at tight end. I don't have any real stands at tight end either. I'm almost in line with the field with all these guys. I'm a little bit overweight to Kelsey, though.
Yep, love it. Love it. Kelsey, also, number 1.
This is a good slate to play 2 tight ends because tomorrow's tight ends, dog shit. Terrible tight end options.
Tomorrow. Hold up. You got to play some Brock Wright if you're playing the 6-game slate. Get to some Brock Wright in your life. Just again, this is the same thing where you're not going to get 100% of the snaps for Sam Laporta, even if he's active. You should have some Brock Wright in your portfolio. So if you want to have a stand on somebody at tight end, we talked about the Musgrave. I said, I'm having a tough time figuring out who I want to be punting with on this 6-game slate. You have Kate Otten, you have Luke Musgrave, you have Tyler Kraft, all in that 3K to 3,300 range. Dalton Schultz at 4,400 is going to be mega chalk for the 6-gamer. And I'm looking at punting. And I think if you're going to punt, go to the bottom, 3K Brock Wright, thank me later.
Yeah, I definitely think so. When I was running lineups just for Sunday, I was getting to a good amount of them. That was when Laporta was projected out in our projections. Still some uncertainty there, but yeah, especially if Laporta doesn't play, Brock Wright definitely looks good. And on tomorrow's slate, you could have a situation where I think probably one of the more likely scenarios, all of the tight ends suck, and then you could just have a punt guy who has like 1 catch for 8 yards and ends up being optimal.
Yep, very, very likely. Isaiah likely.
The next question that we have is from Tensley207, and he is asking us a 2v2 that involves defenses. He's asking us Jerome Ford and the Chiefs defense or Devin Singletary and the Dolphins defense.
The second one every time.
let me think about this. All right. So Singletary and the Dolphins, or Ford and the Chiefs. Yeah, I'm going to go Singletary and the Dolphins. I just don't care about my defenses all that much today. Like, I would like them to do well. It's just not, there's not a real reasonable way to project the defenses. And I prefer Singletary to Ford, therefore the Singletary Dolphins combination.
Let me just tell you, between MMA and NBA and everything else, I know Ben put out some tweet where it's like, there are too many sports today. There is a lot of workout the Sims tool is getting from me today with multiple slates in NFL and MMA and Rainmakers MMA. And I mean, my God, this is going to be a fun evening of sports.
Don't forget that if you guys sign up for our NFL package, you are also going to get access to the PGA package through next Sunday, through January 21st. Sign up for NFL package, which is discounted because we have less games remaining in the NFL season. So we wanted to make it so that it was something that, people didn't feel like they were paying for games they weren't getting because, we don't have like Thursday night football or anything for the rest of the season. So if you sign up, $99 for the rest of the year, and it's also going to get you access to the PGA Sims up until the end of next Sunday. So try it out because we've got the PGA season really kicks off in like 3 weeks or so from now, where we have the Waste Management Open. That's when we're going to start to see bigger prize pools on FanDuel and DraftKings. So chance for everybody who is interested in PGA DFS or just wants to improve the process to get in on the Sims tool. So let's go ahead and check out Discord really quick to see if there's any other questions, which there are not for now. And then also want to make sure that we didn't miss out on any super chats, which we didn't. So just a couple minutes left to go here, Eric. Are there any roundups or maybe something that is relevant to you for the 6-game slate that we didn't cover that is maybe more important than for the 2-game slate?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that are just really, really fun. So first off, think about the injury news that's going to be playing out and then where it's located. I'm obsessed with Devonta Smith for the 6-game slate. A.J. Brown already been ruled out, and I don't understand why there's no ownership coming in there. I do like rotating. The reason that I'm not playing like 100% McCall Hardman on a 6-game slate is that there's Zacchaeus, there's Watkins, there's a number of these guys from Philadelphia in a game that I kind of expect to be a coin flip. I'm surprised the numbers haven't moved as much there with A.J. Brown being ruled out, but I mean, this is such a big deal that you can't really understate that that's a great game environment, obviously being outdoors, but in Florida, looks like it's going to be something that I'm overweight to the field on. And then Green Bay, I'm taking a pretty heavy stand on Green Bay. I think they're going to be far more competitive going up against Dallas there. And Aaron Jones with no A.J. Dillon, he's just kind of unfadable in my opinion for that slate. So a couple of like little tidbits. Just be late swapping. And now with Buffalo, Pittsburgh in better conditions as well, some of the projections, they're getting updated at places, but people might have already built out their lineups, preloaded them for the 6-game slate. Be one of the people who swaps into a little bit more Buffalo, Pittsburgh, and thank me later on that too.
All right, guys, and that is going to do it for us. If you've not done yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thank you guys very much for watching. I'm going to be back here in about an hour and a half to break down the NBA slate with our old pal Max. So hope to see you guys then. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the NFL playoffs and see you here later. About an hour and a half. Never leave the seat.